What is going on, guys? Night Slasher back with another video, and this video is a little bit different. Well, it's not entirely different to things I've done before, but in this video I'm basically just going to talk about something, and there's going to be some gameplay in the background. I captured some WoW gameplay a few days ago, and I don't really have any other use for that, so I think that's going to be what's in the background of this video. But this video really isn't about the gameplay at all. It's really more about another topic, and that other topic is the ending to Dragon Ball GT. I said in my Shadow Warrior Part 6 or whatever it was that I was going to be making this video, and I am going to make this video because I recently watched the whole series, all three series, Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball Z, and GT. I watched all three of them, watched some of the movies, have a pretty good understanding of the series, and I was a little bit disappointed with the GT ending. And if you don't know, the ending to GT is basically the farthest in the timeline that they go. And it's basically the end to Goku's story, or at least one of the endings to Goku's story. And I don't know, it's not really the best, and I want to talk about it. So, one thing I want to get into real quick is this video is 20 years late. I realize that. I wasn't alive 20 years ago, and didn't have an incentive to watch this series till a few months ago when I started watching it. So, I apologize if this is a little bit late and there's already 1,000 videos on this, but I want to make my own for fairly obvious reasons. So that I'm going to cover 5 things in this video, and the first thing is the ending itself. I'm going to talk about the ending. I'm going to say what I thought of it, how I feel about GT as a whole, how I would change it, and is it considered canon? Do I consider it to be canon? And yeah, I'm just going to get right into it. So let's start with the ending. Spoilers, obviously. If you don't want to know the ending to GT, stop watching right now. But basically, Omega Shenron is defeated, and then Shenron comes out of nowhere, and Goku goes and rides off with him. That's the end. And then you go and you look in a little bit later down the line, 100 years in the future or whatnot, and Goku Jr. and Vegeta Jr. are in the finals of the World Martial Arts Tournament. Let's first talk about defeating Omega Shenron. Omega Shenron, in my opinion, was a very weak villain because we didn't have any backstory about him. Just out of nowhere comes and says, "Ha, I am the negative energy of the Dragon Balls. Let us fight." But where did he come from? What it was his purpose? He has no backstory apart from he was created with overuse of the Dragon Balls, which is okay, but we haven't had time to hate him yet. He hasn't really killed anybody. He hasn't really done anything super awful. I mean, yes, he killed the people of Earth, but let's face it, most people probably aren't too worried about the people of Earth in this series. So, you get Omega Shenron, who's an enemy that most people just, like, it's hard to care about him because he just comes out of nowhere pretty much. And at least with Frieza, Frieza killed Krillin, Frieza was terrorizing the planet. Everybody's scared of Frieza. I mean, yes, they did drag it out a bit, but still, he was a significant enemy, and he was evil, and you truly wanted him to die. And then Cell, the same thing. Cell just basically killed everybody and absorbed the entire planet, and Majin Buu is the same, but Omega Shenron, he just comes out of nowhere, and we're supposed to just deal with it, and he's supposed to be the final ending? He's supposed to be the ending to the series? I don't think so. And then Goku just says, "Okay, bye," and jumps on Shenron's back, and they fly off into the distance. Well, first of all, I get really bothered by this because, well, I'll talk more about how I feel about it in a minute. Let's just go over the ending. Then Goku says goodbye to his friends, says goodbye to Piccolo, whatnot, and then as he's flying off in the distance on Shenron, he absorbs all 7 Dragon Balls. We can assume that this makes him the immortal protector of the Dragon Balls, at least that's what I assume. And then 100 years later, Goku's grown up again, but he hasn't aged past, what, 30? And he was watching his descendant fighting Vegeta's descendant in the World Martial Arts Tournament, and Pan's there, and she's an old lady. And it basically ends with Goku walking off in the distance, them saying, whatever, this is the defender of the Dragon Balls, whatnot, evil will not touch the earth again, so on and so forth. So what did I think of this ending? Well, the first thing is what I said about Omega Shenron. The ending to that fight was boring because it wasn't a fight I felt really passionate about at all. So you have to consider that first. And then Goku just ditches his family. He just ditches his wife, his kids, says K-bye. I mean, how many times in the series has Goku's wife cried over some insignificant thing that Goku's done? How is she gonna feel when he just ups and leaves without even saying goodbye, and she's just gotta live out her life alone and die? That, as well as his kids, that bothered me a lot about the ending. And because Pan is so surprised to see Goku 100 years later, that should tell you that in those 100 years, he's not been back. He has not been back. So basically, his friends and family died without even saying goodbye to Goku. And they may or may not see him again. Maybe he visits them in Otherworld. Who knows? But we can safely assume that he doesn't see them often, and they died without ever seeing him again. That's sad, dude. That's awful. Think about that. That is literally the worst. To just and I mean, you I know that they kind of expect that of Goku at this point because all he does is want to run off and train. So they probably wouldn't expect anything else, but it's still messed up. I mean, come on. Think about it. And then from that on, I mean, how did he know? Why did he just go off with Shenron? When did him and Shenron have this conversation that Goku was going to go off and be the defender of the Dragon Balls? When did that happen? Another big GT plot hole right there. Which is kind of just ridiculous, but we can put that aside. And he floats off in the distance. We don't even know where he went. We don't know what he did. And it's it leaves a bit too much to be desired, if that makes sense, at least to me. It makes me not only want more, but it makes me question what exactly did I just watch? What am I seeing here? And I think they really did a bad job of expressing that. I think they did a bad job of leaving you with the satisfied feeling of the end. Some people might like it, and the more I think about it, the more I think, well, they probably did a good job. But now I want to get into what I want to change about it. Or first, let me talk about one thing. I like the part that they have Goku and Vegeta's descendants fighting in the World Martial Arts Tournament. They got that right. Because that shows the everlasting race of the Saiyans. No matter how diluted the Saiyan blood gets, they'll always be there. They'll always be fighting. And that's kind of what you want to see. But I didn't want to see Pan 100 years old without ever seeing her grandfather again. And I didn't want to have to assume that all the other characters in the show were dead. I mean, that was the last thing I wanted. But they still was good to see Goku Jr. and Vegeta Jr. fighting still. That's cool. That's fine. So, I've discussed the ending a little bit. Now let me talk about how I would change it. No. First, let me think what's next on my list, because I wrote a list. I never planned things out, but I did. What I thought, okay. So, next is how I felt about GT as a whole. So, personally, I think the concept of Goku being turned into a child is really stupid. Okay? So, where did the Black Star Dragon Balls even come from? You're telling me Piccolo just forgot about something that significant? You're telling me that Kami just forgot about something that significant? I don't think so. I mean, I sort of get that Piccolo doesn't know, because Piccolo is not the original Piccolo that parted from the first Guardian of Earth. That's not who he is. Piccolo is the son of King Piccolo. So for him to not know about the Dragon Balls is completely understandable. But Kami should. And Piccolo fused with Kami, therefore Piccolo should. And it's really weird that out of nowhere they introduced just another plot hole. Where did these balls come from? How are they different? Why is Shenron red all of a sudden? How did they forget about this? Because you couldn't have forgotten about something that important. And then Goku's just standing there. He doesn't notice the dragon appear behind him. I mean, he can feel air waves, he can feel people move, he doesn't need his eyes to see, but he still doesn't know that there's a huge red dragon behind him, and he gets turned into a child. And the ending, another thing about the ending, Goku never became an adult again. You just had to leave him to grow up. He never got that moment where he became an adult and he lived out his life with his family. And that's just disappointing to me. He never got that. But anyway, back to the beginning. Goku's a child, and haha, lol, Goku scratching the back of his head. I guess I'm small again. And then he goes home to his wife, his family, and he's just, well, guys, I guess we have to go collect the Dragon Balls or else the universe is going to blow up, or the Earth is going to blow up. And I feel like the plot was just very weak. And we meet all these new characters, like, we meet all these insignificant people that we can't really care about. And then all of a sudden, in the end of Dragon Ball Z, right? Majin Buu is like the evil person of the universe. He's the toughest guy and no one can stand against him. Yet all of a sudden we find all these people that were capable of beating Majin Buu. Like, for example, that metal guy, that could turn stuff into metal. Where was he when Majin Buu was around? I guess he wasn't made yet, but the Kai said there's no one on the universe that could beat him, but maybe I should leave that part out. Maybe I should leave that part out. But anyway, my main point is we find all these people that we really know nothing about and we've never heard anything about and we don't get enough on them. So they're just random characters. And I don't think Baby was a bad villain, but he didn't really do what the other villains did. He wasn't quite enough, if that makes sense. He was a little bit bare bones, he was a little bit dry. But the idea of him possessing Vegeta and stuff was cool. I thought that was cool. And I thought Super Saiyan 4 was cool. I thought that whole part was cool. But the part about Goku, the Black Star Dragon Balls suddenly appearing and him becoming a child, all that was stupid to me. So, let's jump in real quick as to how I would change this series. Because there's not a lot more to be said about it. If you've watched it, you've watched it. If you haven't, you haven't. But let me talk about how I would have changed it. Number 1. Why does Goku have to be wished into a child? Why? That's so pointless. Some people might have liked it. I didn't. So that's the first thing I would probably change. Is Goku doesn't need to be wished into a child. The Black Star Dragon Balls don't need to exist. That's just silly. Maybe they do something like, I don't know. I really think that this stuff is best left to the professionals, this writing thing. But let's say, for example, you take out at least the Goku being wished into a child, and maybe you could have it come out some other way. I confess I haven't thought this through enough to really make a general explanation as to how I would change the story, but let's just leave the story alone for now, and let me talk about how I would change the ending, because that I would quite happily make some changes to. First off, for a final wish, why not just restore the Earth to the way it was before the Black Star Dragon Balls was used? Instead of wishing people back to life, why not wish to restore it to that state? That would make Goku an adult again, that would make the Earth whole again, and that would bring back all the people that died. Why not wish for that, as opposed to just wishing everyone back to life with the last wish? That's what I would have had them do. Goku can be an adult, and maybe he does fly off with Shenron to train. Maybe he does become immortal. But we should hear about that, and we should see Goku sitting with his family, eating dinner the way Goku eats, and him just discussing what it's like to be the defender, protector of Earth and stuff. But we don't need to just assume that all his family members die. I really don't want to go into detail too much, because if I'm honest, I would rather pretend that GT didn't even happen. That's what I would rather do. The way I would change it is probably by making GT not a thing. That's the biggest change. And another thing about GT, I thought Pan was a weak character. Because every time she's one of those characters that through the whole time, all she did was slow everyone else down. She didn't even become a Super Saiyan throughout the whole thing. The whole time, she's just normal, boring old Pan. There's plenty of situations where she could have become a Super Saiyan and somewhat saved the day, but they left all of those opportunities out. Why? Probably because the writers couldn't figure out how a girl Super Saiyan should look. And that's a lazy excuse. But nonetheless, should have happened if it was going to happen, and otherwise Pan was just a weak character. Trunks is probably one of the weaker characters as well. They basically took all the strong characters out and went off the weak ones, which I think was bad. Goku's a good character, Vegeta's a good character, Bulma's a good character. These people have strong personalities. I mean, if you watch Dragon Ball Super, Beerus is a really good character, Mr. Satan's funny, all these guys, but they basically just took the weakest and most empty personalities on the show and put them into one, and I thought that was bad. At least that's how I felt. So, there's really not much more to be said about that. I think GT shouldn't have happened. I think some parts of it was cool, but for it to have worked, it should have been completely rewritten. I thought the ending was bad. So let me see what else I have written down here. Is it canon? That's the last thing I want to talk about here. And the answer to me, no, it's not. I don't think it's canon at all. I want to go by what happens in Dragon Ball Super. I want to pretend like the ending of Dragon Ball Z, where Goku flies off with Oob, doesn't happen. I think there's two timelines here. I think it is canon, but there's another canon. There's two canons to this story. You can go by the GT canon, which starts with Goku flying off to train Oob at the end of the World Martial Arts Tournament. That's one timeline. And the other timeline starts with Dragon Ball Super. Let me describe this one more time. So, both of these timelines start after the wish is made that everyone forgets about Majin Buu. After that wish is made, the timeline splits in half and there's two canons. One is GT, which I don't like and I don't consider to be canon, and the other is Dragon Ball Super. GT includes the ending of Dragon Ball Z. GT includes that, and the other one is the wish that everyone forgets about Majin Buu plus Dragon Ball Super. So, I think there were strong points of GT. I do. I think Super Saiyan 4 was cool. I think the whole thing about, I think Gogeta Super Saiyan 4 was really cool. I think Baby was a good villain, and him turning the entire world, basically against Goku was an amazing concept, and I thought that was great, but I think too many other parts of it were poorly executed, and I wasn't a fan. So, I'm glad I could get my point across on this. There's not a lot for me to say, really, except I hope they continue Dragon Ball Super for a long time, and I hope they make that a better ending, a better story, a better timeline, and I really want the best for this series. It's great, I love it, but GT, in my opinion, was the weakest point so far. So, thank you all for watching. I really do appreciate it. Please leave a like. Tell me in the comments what you thought of GT and what you think of the series. And leave a like, sub, and I will see you guys in the next one. Goodbye, everybody.